So if you add up and break down the asking price and salary package of Gyökeres, Osimhen and Ekitike, all three do end up at a similar price range, with Ekitike maybe a bit less in the end, as I think Frankfurt's £85 million price tag probably ends up at around 70 to 75 million plus add-ons. Now, do I think that Ekitike is worth that? Well, right now I'd have to say no. I'd value him at slightly under what City paid for Omar Mamouche, probably around 50 to a max of £55 million. But whilst in my June updated Who Manchester United Should Sign video, where I selected Ferran Torres and Mateta as lower risk, lower cost, more versatile options, at least compared to Gyökeres and Osimhen, Ekitike would be an interesting high risk, high reward alternative, either as a centre forward alternative to Gyökeres and Osimhen, or maybe even an alternative to Mbeumo on the right. And so in this video I'm going to break down how good Ekitike actually is, analysing these strengths and weaknesses in his game, why his absurd non-penalty XG underperformance is actually one of the reasons why I think his potential is so high, which may sound weird, but I think you'll understand what I mean, before towards the end I analyse why I think despite him being overpriced, he could still be a very good long-term signing, with the comparison to Alexander Isak being one that should get people thinking, considering the similarities in their development. And in separate videos I'll compare Ekitike with Gyökeres, Osimhen and others, as well as going into more detail tactically about how he would fit into Amorim's system, but in this video I specifically wanted to analyse Ekitike individually. So how good is Ekitike? Well, he's someone I suggested United should sign whilst he was at Rem, after the 21-22 season, prior to his move that's it is, and when I show you his FB ref report in just a minute you'll see exactly what I mean. But before I come on to that, if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to dragonjersey.com. They've got a variety of different current season and retro jerseys, and we'll have the new season jerseys when they are released. They sent me over this Manchester United 2006-2007 long-sleeved home shirt with Ronaldo 7 on the back, which is one of my favourite shirts of all time, alongside this Nicolas Anelka PSG shirt from the 95-96 season. If you use code Atlantis30 at checkout, you can get 30% off all orders over $100, or you can also use code Atlantis at checkout just to get a 10% discount, so I'll leave it linked in the description and in the comment section below. So previously, from watching Ekitike over the past few seasons, I was familiar with the fact that he's a sort of centre forward who had the technical ability, pace, ball carrying, close control dribbling, physicality and quick footwork to play in a multitude of different roles across the front line. However, since his permanent move from PSG in the summer to Frankfurt, for around £13.5 million, with a 20% sell-on clause inserted into the deal, I think Ekitike's got even better. I describe Ekitike as a mixture stylistically between Xerxes and Rashford. Like Xerxes, he's excellent at linking play with his back to goal when he drops off from the forward line, capable of using his physicality to hold off a defender and then using short sharp layoffs in order to link play, or his quick footwork and turn of pace in order to bypass a defender himself. In tight spaces, he's got the quick footwork and fluidity of someone like Xerxes, maybe not the elegance, but he's just as effective. However, unlike the Dutchman, Ekitike has the Rashford-like turn of pace, enabling him to accelerate away in winger-like fashion. And it's his ball-carrying and dribbling ability that makes him so unique, being a hybrid between a winger and a centre forward, which we can see clearly when looking at the possession section of his FB ref report, where he ranks in the mid-90th percentiles for all three of his ball-carrying metrics, also recording a high take-on percentage as well. Now, in a previous video I had referred to Mateta maybe a bit naively as a complete centre forward, and then Ferran Torres as being even more complete, but I may have to start using another word, as Ekitike is even more complete as a centre forward than Ferran Torres. And you can see this statistically by comparing their FB ref reports over the last 365 days, as whilst Ferran Torres is a high volume progressive passer and chance creator, also with the ability to link play between the lines efficiently in tight spaces, he isn't a high volume dribbler or ball carrier. Ekitike on the other hand is certainly the latter, but the reason why I rate him so highly is that he's just as good when it comes to his progressive passing and his chance creation. And we can see this statistically as, like with his carrying and dribbling, Ekitike ranks in the mid-90th percentiles for his XG assisted, his expected assists and his passes into the penalty area, as well as the 89th percentile for his through balls. And from the eye test you can see why, as for someone who's considered primarily to be a centre forward, the quality level of his passing is bordering on elite already, as he has the ability to find runs with the outside of his right boot using a Trivela technique, but also on his weaker left foot, particularly when he's wide in a crossing position, his accuracy and weight of low passes across the box is very good as well, which alongside his ability to feed cute reverse passes, slide rule balls, and quick flicks around the box to release players into goal scoring positions, makes Ekitike already one of the most creative forwards in world football at the moment. It's obvious to see why there have been comparisons made to Alexander Isak, as Ekitike has a skill set to play as a complete forward, being a threat when running in behind the back line, when drifting out wide, as well as when linking play in deeper positions, and also playing a more creative role between the lines as well. And defensively, whilst his output for Frankfurt this season isn't that high volume, from his time specifically at Rem, but also from the eye test whilst he's been playing at Frankfurt, I think he's more than capable of functioning in an aggressive pressing system, as well as having the positional discipline and work rate to play in one of those wider roles in the midfield line when United drop into a 5-2-3 or a 5-4-1 in the middle third. I think his elite level potential is clear. However, at the moment there is a drawback to his game, which is really the only reason why I would question a valuation above £60 million, and that is his finishing, as statistically Ekitike underperformed his non-penalty XG by a massive 5.3 goals this season, the most of any player in Europe's top 5 leagues, seeing him score only 14 non-penalty goals from a non-penalty XG of 19.3. Now this may be an instant red flag for some people who say that we don't need another forward who isn't clinical in front of goal, and I do think that that's a very valid reason for not signing him as the main centre forward. However, as I've said in previous videos with Cunha and Mbumo in regards to their significant non-penalty XG overperformance of over 6 and 7 goals respectively, being unsustainable going into the next season, let alone being a consistent feature of their game over the course of the next 2 to 5 seasons, the same can also be said for XG underperformance as well, particularly at the rate that Ekitike has been underperforming his this season. See, whilst it is an obvious concern, the fact that he recorded the third highest non-penalty XG, with only Lewandowski and Serhou Guirassy higher, alongside a non-penalty XG of 0.60 per 90, sitting in the 90th percentile when compared against all other forwards around Europe in the last 365 days, this does show that Ekitike's ability to get into and create high-value goal-scoring opportunities for himself is already bordering on or maybe even at the elite level. And when judging centre forwards, particularly young centre forwards, which Ekitike still is, as he only turns 23 this month, I actually think it's more important to look at their non-penalty XG and their ability to get into high-value, goal-scoring positions, as opposed to players who overperform their non-penalty XG, but the non-penalty XG isn't that high, which has been the case with Højlund over the past 2 seasons at Manchester United. See, and really their overall offensive instincts, and so if you have a young forward like Ekitike, who is already putting up very high non-penalty XG rates, then with him simply refining his shooting technique and composure in these goal-scoring situations, which should occur naturally as he gets into his mid-20s, as it did with Alexander Isak, his goal-scoring numbers are going to shoot up dramatically, and maybe even over a short period of time. See, I think it's the same with Garnacho as well. Once Ekitike and Garnacho develop the composure and confidence that should come naturally as they age and get more experience, as well as a more refined technique through individual training, you'll see them level up as players very quickly, due to their ability to get into and create goal-scoring situations for themselves. Whereas with Højlund and Xerxes, it's not necessarily their finishing which is the main issue, but more their ability to consistently generate high-value goal-scoring opportunities via their movement, offensive instincts and ball manipulation inside of the box, which is a much harder skill to develop or coach. See, the best forwards in the world aren't really the best because of how clinical they are as finishers, but instead because they are frequently able to create high-value chances game after game throughout the course of a full season. And this is what people are missing when they claim that Højlund isn't scoring because he isn't getting the service to get those chances frequently enough, when in reality his movement and ball manipulation via his quick footwork in order to open up shooting angles in congested areas is the main factor in him not getting as many high value chances as other centre forwards. The other reason why I'm not massively concerned by Ekitike's XG underperformance is because if you look at his non-penalty goals and non-penalty XG from the Europa League this season, the Bundesliga last season, and even during the 21-22 season in Ligue 1, he wasn't just hitting his non-penalty XG, but actually significantly overperforming it, which, like with the comparison of Mbeumo's non-penalty XG difference from this season to last, suggests to me that Ekitike's finishing isn't actually as bad as his non-penalty goals minus non-penalty XG metrics suggest from this season. There is an element of variance involved, and even if he does underperform his non-penalty XG for the next 2 seasons, it is fairly unsustainable for him to do it at this particular rate. And given his non-penalty XG in general, the 3rd highest of anyone in Europe this season, he doesn't even need to significantly overperform his XG in order to be a 20 to 25 goal a season forward. And so that's why I think Ekitike's potential is so high, because unlike Højlund and even Xerxes as well, who need to develop multiple parts of their skill set significantly in order to reach the elite level, Ekitike reminds me of Alexander Isak when he first arrived at Newcastle when he was only 23 years old, having a similarly complete skill set, which is a mixture of a winger and a centre forward. But up until that point, like Ekitike, Isak had significantly underperformed his non-penalty XG at Real Sociedad in La Liga, and to be honest, whilst both Isak and Ekitike were underperforming their non-penalty XG, Ekitike's skill set is probably more complete than Isak's was at Real Sociedad, specifically when it comes to his progressive passing and chance creation, as you can see statistically when comparing Ekitike from the Bundesliga this season with Isak from La Liga in 21-22. And so whilst Isak was probably overpriced at the time when Newcastle paid £58 million for him, within 12 to 18 months it was looking like a bargain, and I think that could also be the case with Ekitike. So overall, would Ekitike be a good signing? Well, factoring out the fee for a second, I think you'd have to say that he would, as unlike Mbeumo, maybe also someone like Leao who's around that price tag as well, Ekitike's skill set means that he can function highly effectively in any one of the front 3 positions, which takes the pressure off in goal scoring wise, at least for the first season. Now that won't last forever, but Ekitike offers so much in terms of his link play with his back to goal, ball carrying into space, the ability to pull wide, and being a threat when isolating a defender in and around the box with his close dribbling ability, as well as his highly creative passing as well, which would on its own make him one of United's key playmakers in the attack, that his overall performance level isn't as highly dependent on his goal scoring as some other players. The non-penalty XG underperformance and his rash shooting technique are concerns with such a big fee. I am confident that within 18 to 24 months, he is going to be able to iron that out and have a similar sort of goal scoring development to Alexander Isak, because his incredibly high non-penalty XG rate shows that once he can start at least hitting his non-penalty XG, he's going to be one of the best forwards in Europe. And so overall, in isolation, I do think Ekitike would be a very good signing for Manchester United, but I just can't see us getting him for anything that wouldn't be significantly overpaying. If he was around £50 million, then I'd definitely do that deal. But considering we also need 1, maybe 2 central midfielders, a left wing back and a right-sided interior forward, paying £75 million for Ekitike, which is what I think he'd probably end up costing, could also pay for the transfer fees of Kang-in, Mateta and Franjo Ivanovic, which would spread the risk and the pressure out significantly. However, I do concede that there is a high probability that within the next 12 to 24 months, Ekitike for £75 million could look like great value for money, as I think he has the potential to be one of the best centre forwards in the world. So let me know what you think of Ekitike, specifically if you would take him at a lower price. And if you want to check out any cheap, good quality football jerseys, go over to dragonjersey.com. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a 10% discount, so I'll leave a link in the description and in the comment section below. And if you do want to sign up to my Instagram discussion group chat or read any of my articles, I'll leave my Patreon linked on the end screen now as well.